You may already know that the word toki means time, but it is also a word that you can add after a verb or an adjective to express sentences such as, whenever you're feeling uneasy or stressed, I'll be there for you, or when you go out, be sure to lock the door, or when I go to Japan, I'll buy lots of anime merch. We're going to cover how to say all of these sentences later on in the video, so stay tuned. So first, let's cover how to use toki with adjectives, since that's a little simpler than verbs. With adjectives, you can think of toki as literally whenever I'm feeling adjective, or whenever it's adjective, or in times when adjective. And then following this clause, in times when adjective, there's always some kind of conclusion that comes afterwards. This event takes place whenever this condition is met. This might sound similar to tara verbs, like 明日晴れたら海へ行こう, if it is clear tomorrow, when it is clear tomorrow, let's go to the ocean. But it's a little bit different. Tara is more like, if this happens, then this will happen. Toki is more like, whenever this is the case, then this is the case, or then this shall be the case. Not if this thing happens, then this other thing will follow. So the sentences are going to sound a little more generalized often. So here's an example. 暑いとき体がだるくなります. So 暑いとき, whenever it is hot, 体が, my body, the body, だるくなります. So だるい means like sluggish, だるくなる or だるくなります. If you remember from our naru or narimas lesson, it means it becomes the adjective, which is sluggish, so becomes sluggish. So a literal translation would be whenever it's hot, or in times when it's hot, my body becomes sluggish, but we don't talk like that in English. It's more, whenever it's hot, I get sluggish. Just a note, this is a translator pet peeve of mine when people translate these. There's a lot of expressions in Japanese like karada ga something, karada ga something. In English, we would just say, I feel something. But in Japanese, they would often say, my body feels something. And we might express that in English, I feel a something or another in my body is how we might express that. And it sounds a little more poetic, but in Japanese, it doesn't sound as poetic. So yeah, it's always a pet peeve of mine when translators translate karada as body when it really is just me or I. So that's just a note there. Here's another example. つまらないとき. So つまらない is boring. So whenever I'm bored, アニメを見る. So whenever I'm bored, I watch anime. That might apply to many of you watching this video right now. Here are some song lyrics from Sailor Starfighter's image song in Sailor Moon. 不安な時、辛い時、俺がついている. So 不安 is uneasy or anxious. It's a na adjective, so 不安な時, you have to add the na. 辛い時, so 辛い means like when you're stressed or when you're in pain. 辛い is a very complicated adjective. You can kind of translate that a number of different ways, but generally, if you say 辛い, it's like, it's woe is me, it's so painful, my life. So whenever you're feeling anxious or just the weight of the world is crushing you, you're feeling in pain, you're feeling stressed, 俺がついている. So ついている is to be attached or to be with, to follow. So 俺 is me, masculine pronoun. So whenever you're feeling anxious or in pain, I'll be there for you. So again, note that when you're using na adjectives with toki, you have to add the na. You can't just be huan toki. It has to be huan na toki. And also note, toki can be expressed in either hiragana or with the kanji. Here are some more song lyrics. This is from Saber Marionette, J to X, I believe, one of the ending theme songs. 寂しいとき、切ないとき、一人で落ち込まないで. So 寂しい is, again, it's being lonely, kind of sad, like, oh, woe is me, I'm lonely and I'm all alone. 切ないとき. So 切ない is another adjective that it's quite similar to tsurai, when you're in pain, when you're sad. 一人で, all by yourself, 落ち込まないで. So 落ち込む is to be depressed, to fall into despair. And because I'm doing the ないで, I covered this in a former lesson. There's probably a card floating on the screen somewhere. It means don't do that verb. So 一人で, by yourself, despair, fall into a despair. So don't fall into a despair all alone. So whenever you're feeling lonely or sad, please don't despair all alone. So now onto toki with verbs. For verbs, you can think of toki sentences as whenever verb happens, event happens. And if you play around with past and present tense, the sentences kind of change a little bit, so pay attention. We're gonna show this with one sentence, but changing the tenses on some of the verbs to show how it changes. So the verb that I'm going to use is dekakeru, which means to go out, and the event that is going to take place is locking the door, which is doa ni kagi o kakeru or kakemasu. So the straight, bland sentence is dekakeru toki, doa ni kagi o kakemasu. So whenever I go out, I lock the door. It's a generalized sort of statement. Just whenever I go out, I lock the door. Not when I go out, I'm going to lock the door, but just whenever I go out, it's just this habit I have. I lock the door. Like most people, this is true. Versus dekakeru toki, so that part's the same. Doa ni kagi o kakemashita. So I changed the kakemasu to kakemashita, so I changed it from present to past. And this is what happens. I locked the door when I went out, or when I went out, I locked the door. So now I'm describing a specific event that took place. The last sentence, dekakeru toki doa ni kagi o kakemasu, is just a generalized. Well, whenever I go out, I have the habit of locking the door. It's just a thing that I do. But this is, I went out like earlier today and I locked the door. This is this thing that I did. Versus, here's another one that just plays with the verb form a little bit in a different way. Dekakeru toki, so again, same first part of the sentence. Doa ni kagi o kakete kudasai. So this is please lock the door when you go out, or when you go out, please lock the door. So note that I've been swapping the order of the verb and the event. In English, we can say, whenever I go out, I lock the door, and we can also say, I lock the door whenever I go out, and it pretty much means exactly the same thing. But in Japanese, you cannot do that. So I can't say, doa ni kagi o kakemasu dekakeru toki. That doesn't make sense, it's gibberish. So in these three examples, we change the verb tenses of the event verb, which is kagi o kakemasu, right? Now I'm going to show you what happens when you change the verb tenses to the toki verb. Nihon ni itta toki. So not nihon ni iku toki, but nihon ni itta toki. Anime gutsu wo takusan kaimasu. So the verb that's going with toki is iku, itta, go. Nihon ni, so go to Japan. That's my toki verb. My event is anime gutsu wo takusan kaimasu. Buy lots of anime merch. So this sentence is, when I go to Japan, I will buy lots of anime merch. Now you may be confused, and it is a little weird, because you would think it's when I went to Japan, but then it's present tense, kaimasu. So it's like, when I went to Japan, I will buy lots of anime merch. This is how it would work in English, which is weird. We don't talk like that. The reason why this works is it's more like when I have gone to Japan, like I've gone there and then I'm there, then I will buy lots of anime merch. So I'm going to show you now what happens if that iku verb is present tense. Same sentence, I'm just changing the tense of iku. Nihon ni iku toki, anime gutsu wo takusan kaimasu. This becomes the more generalized statement of whenever I go to Japan, I have this habit, I always buy lots of anime merch. Whenever I go to Japan. Whenever I'm in Japan, I always buy lots of anime merch. This is true. I've only been to Japan like 3 times ever in my life, but every single time I've been to Japan, that's what happens. I buy lots of anime merch. Well, manga, more so. But it becomes more of a generalized statement. I'm not talking about any specific time that I'm going to Japan or that I went to Japan. It's just like, in general, when I go to Japan, I buy lots of anime merch. Now, look what happens when I change the event verb to past tense as well. So now both of the verbs are in past tense. Nihon ni itta toki, anime gutsu wo takusan kaimashita. When I went to Japan, I bought lots of anime merch. So the first sentence we looked at, Nihon ni itta toki, anime gutsu wo takusan kaimasu. That's more like, once I have gone to Japan, I will buy lots of anime goods. But this one is more like, when I went to Japan 20 years ago, I bought lots of anime merch. So I'm talking about this specific event that happened in the past. The event happened already because the past tense verb is the event verb. アニメグッズをたくさん買いました。Past tense. This event already happened in the past. So the toki verb, the thing that made the event happen, also happened in the past. So when I went to Japan, I bought lots of anime merch. So the takeaway here, if the toki verb and the event verb are both in the present tense, that becomes just a generalized statement of whenever I do this verb, this event takes place. If the toki verb is in past tense, but the event verb is in present tense, also future tense, by the way. Remember, Japanese doesn't exactly have a future tense. That means once this verb has happened, then this event will take place. And then if both the toki and event verbs are in past tense, it means everything happened in the past. When I went, when I did this verb, then this event also took place all in the past. It's kind of a little confusing sometimes, but just go back to these model sentences and look at them and hopefully it'll piece itself together after a while. This is also similar to tada verbs, so if you're a little confused on this particular grammar rule, you can make do with mostly just using tada verbs instead if you're a lot more comfortable using tada verbs. Or if tada verbs were tripping you up, but this makes more sense to you, you can use this. So don't worry if you don't know how to do this super well. It's just another tool that you can use at your disposal. So to review all the model sentences in this video, check the timestamps in the pinned comment at the top of the comment section or in the video description. And also, do not learn all your Japanese from me. Oh no, I am but one source, and I am a Japanese to English translator who is not native Japanese, so my accent is not perfect. So you should learn from many other sources so you get many different perspectives. There are lots of other sources listed in the video description below, and sometimes after these episodes, I feature smaller content creators that you can go find, but I have none this week, so check out the links in the video description for other sources. Thanks for watching, and thank you to all the patrons who support this and the other series on my channel. If you want to support this particular series and get additional bonus materials like study guides, worksheets, answer keys, song translation breakdowns, and the like, go check out my Patreon. There's a lot of different tiers that you can join and get a lot of different customizable perks. And be sure to tune in next week when we cover te and toyu. 頑張ってね!